If you've watched my videos, you probably already know that I absolutely love foraging. Most of us are pretty used to taking in our surroundings with our eyes, our ears, hands and our noses. I'm someone who relishes cooking and eating and experimenting with new flavors. But only in the last few years have I begun to use my sense of taste properly as I explore the ecosystem around me. There's something quite adventurous and intimate about getting to know a landscape with your taste buds. In this video, I'd like to share with you everything we foraged on a single day in May, and a few tips and foraging values that I've learned so far. We started off our day in Preston Park in Brighton, our nearest city and a wonderful place to gather elm samaras. A samara is the exotic sounding word for the flat fruit with a seed in the middle, but some people call the whole thing an elm seed. They are one of my favorite wild foods in the spring. Fresh, sweet and nutty, kinda like a lettuce and pine nut salad all in one. A terrible tree pandemic called Dutch elm disease killed off most of Europe's mature elms before I was born, but Brighton has carefully protected them. This city is the tree's best remaining stronghold, showing that you don't always have to go into the wilderness to find rare treasures of nature. This particular tree is the oldest English elm left in the whole world. There used to be two side by side here. Together they were known as the Preston twins. Its twin unfortunately caught the disease and had to be cut down in 2019, just as our own human pandemic was starting. We then headed back to our place in the countryside to see what we could find to go with the elm samaras. So we're just around the corner from where we live, and we just popped out here to get a few things for dinner because there's a lot of wild foods growing around here, everything very common in our area. And so we're getting some nettle tips, just the like nice, more tender bits, and we're basically using it as like a spinach substitute. And then we're getting some Jack of the Hedge, also called garlic mustard. It's quite strong, so we're just using like the flowers and the top leaves to garnish salad. And then we're also getting some hawthorn flowers and buds to make some tea. It's a good idea to have a plan like this of what you intend to do with what you forage, to know how much you need. Avoid the impulse to collect heaps of stuff when you realize that it's all edible and free. Otherwise, later you might struggle to work out what to do with a bag full of wilting plants. When I'm foraging, I think of the plants as being in different categories. Some, like the nettles or the cleavers, are mild-tasting greens, and you can collect them in generous amounts. That's one category, and I often mix them together. Another category are those that are a bit pointless as foods, but are a really nice way to get a taste of the seasons, to nibble as you walk along or make into tea. Bramble shoots are an example, and these hawthorn buds as well. They are one of those foods that might even be a tiny bit toxic if you ate huge amounts, but you only need a spring for a pot of tea. Then there are plants like ground ivy that have lots of character, but you only need a handful to get a lot of value from it. When you're new to foraging, you might get a bit put off by trying to eat a big bowl of bristly ground ivy or bitter Jack by the Hedge, but they're both excellent when mixed in with other things. Can you hear the bird song? So many of them. It smells so good.
that happen?
I don't know, I was being too keen and greedy. This pretty plant that is growing all around me, it is called water dropwort, and it has a claim to be the most deadly poisonous plant growing in the UK. And it's in the same family as the hogweed that we're about to forage just over there, which is edible, not poisonous, and very tasty. Don't be put off trying foraging just because dangerous plants exist. There's plenty of wild foods that are safe and unmistakable for beginners. And then as you gain confidence, you can extend your range. This over here might be the most lush and tasty looking grass I've ever seen in my life. Doesn't it look so delicious? Kind of makes me want to be a sheep. Wild garlic is easy for beginners. Before it flowers, it looks a tiny bit like the poisonous lily of the valley, but you can easily tell them apart with a sniff. Just make sure you've done a little research first. I'm going to put links to a few of my go-to resources in the description box below. Then we headed home to prepare our foraged feast. As well as being careful that your foraging doesn't hurt you, you'll want to be sure that it's not going to hurt the environment either. This isn't always clear or straightforward, but don't let that put you off. It's precious to take opportunities to enjoy nature's abundance, as well as knowing when to hold back. As you forage, think about your position in the food web and ask yourself a few questions like, if I'm being a herbivore, how am I affecting the species I'm grazing from? How can I reduce that impact? Over-foraging wild garlic could wipe out the patch, but taking elm seeds doesn't hurt the elm. I like eating weeds from the garden, as I'll probably remove them anyway, and this habitat is already of reduced value compared to the wild. Also, ask yourself, how am I affecting the other creatures that I share this resource with? Nettles are important for butterflies, elm seeds for squirrels, flowers for bees. You don't want to overly impact those animals, but at the same time, do remember that you are an animal and a legitimate participant in the ecosystem. And you can't opt out. You have to get your nourishment somewhere. If you leave all the nettles to the caterpillars to avoid impacting the ecosystem and instead eat an equal amount of supermarket spinach, that has a greater impact. The production of supermarket greens likely uses pesticides, plastic packaging, and is transporting in big diesel lorries. As a vegan, I try my very best to reduce the harm my food choices cause, while being well aware that it's impossible to have no impact at all. So embrace your place in the ecosystem alongside other organisms. You belong in it. If you enjoyed this video, liking and subscribing to my channel really helps me to create more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.